It started as nothing more than a legend, whispers about witches deep in the woods, the kind of tale passed down to keep children from wandering too far. No one believed it. Why would they? Stories like that don't belong in the real world. But legends have a way of lingering, festering just beneath the surface, waiting for someone curious, or foolish, enough to dig them up. I moved to the small town a few months ago. It was the kind of place people go to escape, nestled in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by endless stretches of dense forest. Perfect for someone like me, someone looking to get away from everything. I rented a small house on the edge of town, isolated and quiet. Just me, the trees, and a world that seemed content to leave me alone, but the town wasn't without its quirks. There was something odd about the locals. They avoided the woods with a reverence that bordered on superstition. Even in broad daylight, no one strayed too far from the edge of the trees. And at night, the entire town seemed to go silent, as if waiting for something to stir in the darkness. The stories started to seep into my thoughts. You'd hear them from time to time, if you stayed long enough. Witches. A coven that lived deep in the woods, hidden for centuries, practicing dark rituals in the shadow of the trees. They said the woods belonged to them, that anyone who ventured too far wouldn't come back. Of course, no one had ever actually seen them, but that's how legends work. They don't need proof to sink their claws into you. I wasn't the type to scare easily. I didn't believe in witches or curses, and the thought of a dark coven lurking in the woods felt ridiculous. But something in the air, in the stillness of the forest, made me uneasy. It was the kind of quiet that felt unnatural, like the land itself was holding its breath. It was on a cool, fog-laden evening when my curiosity got the better of me. The sun was sinking low, casting long shadows through the trees. I told myself I was just going for a walk, but deep down, I knew what I was looking for. The stories had planted a seed in my mind, and I wanted to see if there was anything to them, if the woods really held secrets. The further I went, the thicker the air became. The trees loomed taller, darker, as if bending in to close me off from the world I knew. The path beneath my feet twisted and turned, and soon I realized I wasn't following any trail at all. The landscape had changed. The woods around me seemed ancient, untouched by time, as if I had stepped into another world. There was something ahead, just barely visible through the fog, a clearing, bathed in a cold, unnatural light. As I approached, my pulse quickened. My instincts screamed at me to turn back, but I pressed on, drawn by something I couldn't explain. The clearing was unlike anything I had ever seen. In its center stood a ring of stones, old and weathered, forming a perfect circle. The ground around it was scorched, blackened as if by fire, though no flames had touched it for centuries. Symbols, crude and dark, were carved into the stones, symbols I didn't understand but instinctively feared. The silence here was suffocating, heavier than before. Even the wind seemed to stop at the edge of the clearing, as if unwilling to disturb whatever lay within. I stepped closer, heart pounding, when I felt it. A presence, something watching, waiting. The trees seemed to shift around me, their branches swaying though there was no breeze. Shadows danced at the edge of my vision, flickering between the trees like figures moving just out of sight. And then, I saw them. They appeared slowly, emerging from the shadows of the trees. Cloaked figures, their faces obscured, their bodies moving with an eerie, unnatural grace. There were 6 of them, no, 7. They moved silently, surrounding the clearing, their heads bowed as if in prayer, though no words left their lips. My breath caught in my throat. These weren't just people. There was something wrong about them, something ancient and malevolent that I couldn't put into words. They circled the stones, their hands raised in unison. As they moved, the symbols carved into the rocks began to glow, faint at first, then brighter, casting the entire clearing in an otherworldly light. The air grew thick, stifling, as if the forest itself was closing in on me. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. It was as though the forest had rooted me in place, holding me there, forcing me to witness whatever was about to unfold. One of the figures stepped forward, standing at the center of the ring. Slowly, deliberately, they raised their hands, and the ground beneath them began to tremble. The earth split open, a deep, unnatural crack that seemed to yawn from the depths of the world. From it came a sound, a low, guttural hum that resonated deep within me, vibrating through my bones. It wasn't just a sound. It was something alive, something dark, and it was waking up. The figures continued their ritual, their movements slow, deliberate, as the hum grew louder, more intense. The air vibrated with it, and the light from the stones grew brighter, almost blinding. I tried to turn away, but something held me there, forced me to watch as the crack in the earth widened, revealing something wrong. Shapes moved in the darkness beneath the ground. Twisted, writhing figures, clawing their way up from the earth. The figures in the cloaks continued their silent ritual, their movements growing more frantic, more desperate, as the things from below crawled closer to the surface. My chest tightened, panic rising as I watched those things, limbs too long, bodies twisted in unnatural ways, eyes that glowed with a hunger I couldn't describe. They were reaching up, towards the surface, towards me. The witches stepped back, their ritual complete. The ground opened wider, and the creatures emerged, spilling into the clearing like shadows made flesh. I turned to run, but it was too late. The forest had closed in around me, the trees shifting and twisting, blocking every escape. I was trapped. The last thing I saw before the world went black was a hand, pale, thin, with fingers too long to be human, grasping at my ankle, pulling me down into the darkness. When I woke, I wasn't in the forest anymore. The clearing was gone, the witches gone, but the darkness remained. I'm still here, wherever here is. There are no stars, no sky, just an endless void. I can hear them now. The witches. Their whispers fill the air, though I still can't see them. And the creatures, they're always near, just out of sight, waiting. I think they're waiting for me to scream, but I won't give them the satisfaction, not yet, but I know, eventually, I will.